Hey, it's me, Dantaku, aka Danny. I'm back again for another video breakdown. This week we have the malicious and remorseless anime music video, Bad Bitch. The coolest thing about making these AMVs using lo-fi music is the fact that I can be much more experimental with my editing. It allows me to get much more wackier, and I think this video reflects that. The last video breakdown added a new component to the format, storytelling. Moving forward, there'll be far less preamble, so it'll be much less time consuming. Plus, this week's AMV doesn't have any story, so this will be a much more shorter video breakdown. Ultimately, I just wanted to show about a minute and a half of Android 18 kicking some Super Saiyan ass. That's what I was really trying to capture with this AMV, just Android 18 being a badass. Anyways, let's not waste any more time, and let's break this video down. As always, we first have to do the traditional zoom out. As you can see, there are some interesting things going on in this timeline, a couple interesting moving pieces. So there's three different looks throughout this video. The first one is the black and white look, which appears 3 times throughout the video. First, I applied a lumetri color effect to the clip. I have the saturation set to 0, the vibrance set to -35, and the faded film cranked to 75. In the creative section, I have Cinespace 2, 3, 83, etc. in the look drop-down menu. This makes the blacks darker and the whites lighter. In the basic correction drop-down menu, I set the contrast to -50, the shadows to -25, the whites to -150, and the blacks to 50. This was to make the black and white colors flatter. Nothing was too bright or too dark. The next look appears throughout most of the video. It seems like a common element amongst lo-fi videos to make the colors flat and much less poppier. I guess it's to make it seem older, more aged. First is the lumetri color. Creative section, saturation 85, vibrance -35, faded film 65. This cuts a layer off those colors. Basic correction, contrast -50, shadows 25, blacks 50. This makes the colors flatter and gives the appearance of a more aged look. The last look of this video is those ephemeral bursts of red. The reason why I used this color is because I immediately get this impression of rage, anger, heat, fire, and of blood and gore. It just exudes malice. It's also such a striking color in contrast to the black and white. First, I added an arithmetic effect. The operator is set to max, red value is set to 255, green 0, blue 75. I added a little bit of blue to give the darker colors just a touch of purple. Next, I added a color balance effect. I adjusted the lightness to -25. This was to kill some of that brightness, to maintain that flatness. After that, I added a lumetri color effect. In the creative section, I adjusted the faded film to 75, and I bumped the vibrance to 100. This was to further tweak that flatness and to give it more of that aged sort of look. The next item on this video breakdown list is the 3 cropped face slices. To reiterate what I said earlier, making these lo-fi AMVs allows me to be more avant-garde and more experimental with my typical editing style. There really isn't any rhyme or reason to having this in the video. I just thought it sounded cool in my head, and then I added it to the video. Simple as that. For any other AMV, I would really have to contemplate on whether or not to add that kind of thing in the video. What I did is I added a crop effect to my original footage. I cropped the left and right by 33.3%, which is roughly 1/3 of the width of the scale of the frame, 1920. After that, I adjusted the position of the slices to fit on the left and right sides of the frame. The original crop slice didn't need to be moved since it's exactly in the middle. And just as a side note, these slices use pretty much the same red color correction as the red look, with just a few differences. You may not have noticed this little effect because of how the original footage is done, but for each time Android 18 hits Trunks and you see those bursts of red, I added a transform effect and boosted the scale from 100 to 140. It's a little hard to tell because in the original footage, to make the impact of the hits more brutal, they quickly zoom in and out to give that sensation. Right after that, there is a keyframe scale and position. I really wanted to capture that smile on Android 18's face, plus there's something about the way that the scale and position change looks. It just has that attitude about it. This is a common motif in my AMVs, such as this one, attitude. The scale starts at 120 and ends at 130, and the position starts at the default point, the center of the screen, and ends towards the upper left of the screen towards Android 18's face. So this is actually the first time I've ever done this. Now I forget what the percentage numbers are, but as you can see, the footage progressively gets faster, then eventually stops and returns to normal speed. In short, I condensed a 2-second and 13 frame clip into 1 second and 9 frames. I use this keyframe speed change again when Android 18 is throwing Vegeta at Trunks. I sped up the throw, and when Vegeta hits Trunks, I restore the speed back to normal. It helped amplify that impact. Right after that keyframe speed change, I used some creative editing to fit this clip into this space. There's 3 points in this clip. 18 moves that chunk of mirror to reveal Trunks. Trunks gives a startled reaction, then 18 smiles at the end. I made an edit after 18 moves that mirror to reveal Trunks, then I added 5 frames before Trunks reacts, then let that ride for 10 frames, then after that, added 6 frames before 18 smiles at the end. Basically, I just cut out all the middleman, so to speak, all the unnecessary frames. Yet I still left a couple frames in so that the audience could see and react to what was happening during those 2 seconds. Immediately after that, we have this crazy amalgam of effects. To start, I used a keyframe speed change. This is another moment when it's just a little hard to actually see that this effect is there, but I assure you it is there. As you can see, this clip is purple and not the standard blue. This is because I had to export the clip with the speed change and import it back into my project. For whatever reason, Premiere Pro or maybe my computer can't handle certain stacked effects, and this was one of those instances. So after the keyframe speed change, I added a offset effect. I set the first keyframe at minus 9,720, and I set the second keyframe at the default 960. This makes the footage spin to the right roughly 10 times. Then to further aid in the illusion that the footage is spinning extremely fast, I added a directional blur effect to this clip. The direction is set to 90 degrees, so horizontally, the same direction as the offset. Finally, we have the spherize effect. First, I created an adjustment layer, then I added a spherize effect to it. I set the radius to 1200, and the center of the sphere is set at the default position in the center. This encompasses the entire screen. This is to make the screen more rounder. I think I was going for this physical look of tape from a cassette. That probably sounds strange, like, I guess maybe more like a VHS is more like it. I used the same effect again in this AMV, except the second time I spin the footage vertically and add a much slower rotation. During the making of this video, I was very conscious of things that could be potentially harmful to someone who has epilepsy or seizures, because I had read that Incredibles 2 had scenes that were causing people who suffer from epilepsy to have seizures, which I don't know how that slipped by. Even I felt queasy watching those scenes. I actually had to look away for a couple seconds, and that kind of stuff usually doesn't get to me. So that whole controversy changed my entire perspective on how I create my AMVs. I've even thought about adding some kind of warning at the beginning of the video about how there may be some parts of the video that contains flashing lights and stuff like that. If you are a person who has epilepsy or photosensitivities, please let me know if my videos have been an issue for you. I'll be more than happy to place a pre-video warning or even put a warning in the description section just so that, there's a, you can protect yourself, I guess. Now, I don't know if my small modifications made these flashes any better. All I can say is that I hope it made some kind of difference. So I took one frame from a black video and just synced it to the music with these 4 hi-hat hits. Now, to make it easier on the eyes, I adjusted the opacity from 100 to 75%. Again, I don't know if this is better, worse, or doesn't matter in the least, but I hope it helped a little. I use these flashes again towards the very end of this video. This little effect is used 3 times throughout the video. The first use of this effect is when Android 18 kicks Vegeta. What I did is I set one keyframe for the scale at 100, one frame after the flash from the impact. One frame after that, I set a keyframe at 105, then 2 keyframes after that, I set a keyframe back at 100. This just gives the footage a little bump to embellish the music. The second use of this effect is right after 18 kicks Vegeta. The third use of this effect is a little bit different. It appears when 18 throws Vegeta at Trunks. I created an adjustment layer, I added a transform effect, I set the scale to 110. I made the scale go from 110 to 100, then back to 110. So this makes the bump, as I'm calling it, go inwards rather than outwards. The reason why this one is different from the previous ones is because it simply looked better. 18 is throwing Vegeta away from her, so it kind of makes sense to make the bump appear going away from the screen rather than towards it. So this part of the video makes me laugh every time. The lyrics are something something, steal your soul. And what makes me laugh is that Android 18 kicks Vegeta so hard that she knocks the color out of him. It's kind of like that line from Ghostbusters,
I have seen shit that'll turn you white.
For this effect, I first duplicated the clip and trimmed the duplicated clip to 19 frames after that scale bump. After that, I added a Gaussian blur effect. I set the blurriness to 100, so it's extremely blurry. Then I set an opacity keyframe at the beginning of the clip at 100%. Then at the end of the clip, there's another keyframe set at 0%. This is what makes that glow gradually disappear over time. Next, I set the blend mode of the opacity to linear dodge add. This is what gives that glowy look. And the last thing I did with this duplicated clip is I set a scale keyframe at the beginning to 100, then at the very end of the clip, I placed another one at 125. This is what gives it that billowing effect. It's very similar to that pop-out effect I did in the AMV Glory and Gore remastered. Now to get the footage to go from color to black and white, I applied a lumetri color effect to the clip below the duplicated one. In the creative section, I laid down a vibrance and saturation keyframe at the beginning and end of where that duplicated clip is. The first vibrance keyframe is set at the default 0 and then ends with 100, and the saturation keyframes are 100 and 0. The reason why I added the vibrance was to make some of that black and white a little bit more flatter. For the most part, I was just testing things to see if they would even work, and for the most part, it worked out fairly well. First, I duplicated the clip, then scrubbed through the clip to find a point where Android 18 stops talking, or used what the English voice actors call the mouth flaps. Then I use a frame hold to capture that moment. But I still need to have 18 taking off her jacket, so what I did is I applied a crop effect to the duplicated frame held clip, then zoomed up really close and created an elliptical mask on Android 18's nose and mouth. Then clicked on the inverted setting, so instead of cutting a hole in the footage, this cuts everything around it. In effect, I made it so that Android 18 isn't talking at all when she's taking off her jacket. There is one flaw in how I did it in this video. I left the cropped mouth sort of hanging there in the same position. With Dragon Ball Z footage, the frame is always a bit turbulent and jittery, which is probably because it was made on film and not digital. But that's beside the point. The point I'm trying to make is that to do this unequivocally, you have to move the position of the cropped face in parallel to the non-cropped face. This is to further the illusion of something that hasn't been tampered with, to make it look as though what the audience sees is the original unaltered footage. The reason why I didn't go through with it is because I am phenomenally lazy and got fairly lucky with getting away with it. But this should be an interesting new trick to try out in future AMVs. This was another thing that was just completely random. It was just something that I found funny, so I added it to the video. Shino Seppun roughly translate to kiss of death or death kiss. I ran this through Google Translate, so it's probably not 100% accurate. This idea came from one of the episodes of Wild Boys where David Weathers gets behind a king cobra and kisses the head of the snake, and they call it the kiss of death. Just a little backstory. For this part, all I did is I added a frame hold at the part where 18 kisses Krillin, then returned the footage back to normal as soon as that snare hits. Simple as that. This was another experimental effect I was trying out for the first time. First, I applied a color balance HLS effect to the clip. I set the first saturation keyframe at the beginning of the additive dissolve to 0. Then I added another keyframe in the middle of the additive dissolve to -100. Finally, I added a Gaussian blur effect to the clip, and both keyframes are set at the same points as the color balance saturation keyframes. The first one is set at 0, and the second one is set at 50. Alright, we are totally done breaking this video down. There's nothing else to do, nothing else to say. That was it. Simple as that. Anyway, so thanks for watching this video breakdown. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some interesting tips. Maybe some, I got some creative juices going. Some idea for you to try out in your AMV. Something along those lines, I suppose. And like I said, there's really no story to this. It's all, I want to say pointless. I don't think I want to say that, but it's, it's just one of those AMVs, an action AMV where, it's just no story to it. It's just for fun. And I think that's about it, really. So yeah, thanks for watching again. You can check out the rest of the video breakdown series, the rest of the video breakdown anthology, if you will, via YouTube, or preferably you can go to my website, dantaku.com, and it's all there, all available for you and your viewing pleasure. And this also includes all my AMVs. You can see, I think it's now like 40 AMVs in total, plus 4, maybe it's like 36 AMVs plus 4 remastered AMVs, so I'm not sure what the math is there. But the point is, you can see all of those wonderful videos that I've been making for over the past 5 damn years. Yeah, so you can go there and just spend. I don't think it totals an hour. I think it's maybe like 40 minutes total of viewing time for all the AMVs put together. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk any longer because definitely going on a rant, or a diatribe, if you will. So yeah, thanks for watching. Go to the website and check out the rest of my videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.